Okay, hello and welcome to another podcast from Agile Technology. Today we're very fortunate to be joined by Frank Jaskulke. Hello, Frank.
Hey, how's it going, Steven? It's good to
I'm
see
very
you
well,
again.
Frank. Good to see you again, sir. Frank, I know you've had an extraordinary history in medtech in the USA, and I'd like to talk to you today about the US medtech industry and what's been happening perhaps over 2025. I know IPOs are back, and you recently shared Heartflow's IPO filing. And as we see the beginning of medtech capital market thaw, or is it still a selective reopening? What kind of companies are really IPO ready in this climate?
Yeah, ever since the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act or SOX, the cost to go public in the U.S. has gone up dramatically. And so, whereas 20 plus years ago, a small, few million in revenue company to go public raised capital to fund growth. Today, the requirements are much higher. Some estimates are it's a $500,000 to $1.5 million a year of just accountancy fees to be a public company. To handle that sort of cost, you got to be pretty substantial anyway. So generally, what I'm hearing from the bankers is companies that are in the tens of millions or maybe even 100 million in revenue that still have mid to high double digit annual growth prospects are really where the IPOs are. But what's important about it is not if any individual company can do it, but if there are some IPOs happening, that means there's another potential for exit, another potential for investor return, which then makes it more attractive to invest in early stage medical device, sort of lifting the weight off the shoulders of all the entrepreneurs. So even if your company may never go public, it is a good thing if there are more IPOs happening.
Okay, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I've seen AI and medtech and the trend and the turning points over the last few years, but we've passed the recent 690 FDA cleared AI and medical and ML medical devices. But the real pressure is now on workflow integration, not
Yeah.
novel. And how are the best startups using AI to actually reduce burden or unlock revenue?
Oh, yeah. It's such a great point. I think early on, a lot of AI in healthcare and medtech companies were focused on AI to better diagnose or manage disease, which, yes, matters. But the thing that the docs, the health systems, the payers cared about was workflow. AI tools that speed up procedures, speed up diagnosis, make them more accurate, remove steps in the process, and that fit into the existing workflows, those are the ones that have won. And the reason is very simple. Docs in the US are so busy, the hospitals are so busy, and they're so broke, they can't
Yes.
really put new things in. They need to take administrative waste out to then free up the space for new innovation. So, yeah, the ones that have fit into workflow and make procedures or other things more efficient, they're winning in the market.
They're winning, absolutely. They're unlocking revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen with FDA, in terms of FDA, there's more talk around the FDA total product life cycle approaches and pre-cert pathways for AI. Are you seeing more startup plans around faster interactive or iterative approaches, I should say, or is FDA conservatism still the norm?
Oh, it's a good one. I wish more startups would approach FDA earlier, take a more iterative, interactive approach in their product development and in their FDA work. What I see a lot of is companies that they're coming to us for regulatory consulting and they've already made the whole product
Yeah.
and they have their strategy figured out in their head. They've raised money on it, they've made plans on it, and they're simply assuming that they'll figure the FDA part out. And in the case of AI, the agency has said many times it considers it one of the more high risk applications. So there's almost always a clinical requirement, a US clinical requirement. The analysis is going to be much stricter from the FDA. So yeah, I wish I saw more companies taking like a total product lifecycle approach and working on these things earlier versus shotgunning right to the FDA and hoping they don't get rejected.
Okay, okay. So in terms of your role inside of Avio, you support early stage teams. So what are you seeing from US investors right now? Is it the appetite coming back for seed and Series A medtech, or is everyone still stuck in the B2B SaaS model?
Mm. Yeah, it's always hard to raise money. Sometimes they're harder, and I would say right now it's been harder. Um, Pre-seed and seed funding has done pretty well, but those are smaller dollar amounts, and it's got more noise in it because there's just so many companies. Growth rounds have held up because, hey, you're back in revenue. Where we've heard from a lot of companies, the real challenges have been around like larger A and the B rounds, where you're funding a clinical study, you're funding final approval, kind of in between the dream and the reality of the product. And the other part that I think is a big challenge for the entrepreneurs is there's a lot more companies competing for the same dollars. It is cheaper to start a company today, especially if it's a software as a medical device. And so there's just a lot more out competing for the same pool of capital, knocking on investors' doors. And then the investors have got to sort through a lot more noise to find the high quality investment opportunities, which stretches fundraising rounds out.
Okay, I hadn't realized that. That actually makes perfect sense. So you've actually brought up a rather interesting subject here. And I know in 2025, more early stage startups are being asked to produce early payer engagement or BIA data before Series B. So how has this shifted your advice to first-time founders when they've pitched or prototyped?
Yeah, the early payer engagement is really important, but I think companies get confused on what it can mean. So a lot of companies will take it as I should go and talk with United Health Group, or I should go talk with one of the blue plans. And at the end of the day, they're unlikely to have a conversation with some random early stage company. What the companies miss and what we advise them to go and get help from professionals on is start with an analysis of the payer landscape today. Does payment already exist? Do codes already exist? Do coverage policies already exist? And do you know that codes, coverage, and payment are different things?
Yes.
Right? Start with the stuff you can go and research on a payer's website or get help from an expert and figure out, I think this is a branch. Do you fit into something that exists today, or do you need to modify or create something new? If you fit into something that exists today, you've got a much easier path to market and a much easier path to fundraising. If you don't, it's not that you can't create a new payer pathway, but you're going to have to do a lot more work. And so the value has to be much greater. The clinical impact needs to be significant. The market needs to be real, right? The value has got to be there. So I encourage doing the research, getting expert help to inform early, like at product conception. If there is no reimbursement pathway, you might want to rethink the product you're working on.
Absolutely. Do the reimbursement analysis. I couldn't agree
Yep.
more. Okay, so outside of Boston and the Bay, places like Minnesota, Houston, and the Carolinas are building real medtech muscle, I believe. What's the state of US regional hubs? Are they founders finally starting to pay locally?
Yeah, it varies hub to hub. And this is something that, in my years working with different outside the US companies coming in, a thing that sometimes gets missed is, the United States is population wise, call it like a little bit bigger than the EU, and physically a lot bigger. And so there's huge regional variation, right? Like each state is kind of its own country in some ways. So in hubs like Houston, for example, there's a lot of wealth, and we're seeing that money get invested in new innovations. In the Carolinas, we've seen a lot of companies form, but it's newer, right? And there's not as well established investor networks, but they're building them. You go to the established hubs like a Minnesota, a Boston, and I would put Southern California over the Bay Area for California. It's about 5 times the size of the Bay in medical device. Those communities have very well established investment groups, as well as, and this I think is most important for a company, they're attracted to investors from outside of the region. So a company that's in South Carolina or in Houston may have a harder time getting Bay Area investors to write a check versus a company in Minnesota. Bay Area investors are very comfortable deploying capital, or a company in Boston, they're very comfortable deploying capital there. And the reason is they know in that ecosystem, there's a pool of talent, there's suppliers, there's consultants, there's a level of expertise that can use that money to good effect.
Okay, okay, that absolutely makes sense. Many founders assume that FDA clearance is market access, but in the USA, that's just the beginning. I mean, how do you help teams navigate the next steps, providing economic and operational value to payers, IDNs, and healthcare systems?
Oh,
I mean, do you
yeah.
have an example where Avio's helped a startup translate tech specs?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Market authorization is not market adoption. And if done wrong, market authorization could actually hinder your ability to get market adoption, right? The wrong regulatory strategy could lock you into a payment stream or something that is not right for the business. So the way we advise and ways we've helped is we'll try to get to the companies way, way early, like at product conception, early R&D, and we'll do a market analysis. This isn't a reimbursement analysis. This isn't like the full plan, but we'll sit down with the founder and we'll do a basic analysis of the market. And then we'll dig into how do the products that are in that space today get sales? How are they bought? And how are they paid for, which are two different things in healthcare in the US. And from that, we'll try to understand where are the barriers that this company might run into, and then use that information as design inputs right into the product development. So we had a company recently that was looking at the rehab space. They wanted to pursue reimbursement for the product, and we were able to tell them very quickly, hey, this is a non-reimbursable activity,
Yes.
right? Like it's not that there isn't clinical value or the product isn't good. This is just not a thing that payers pay for, and you should then work on different commercial strategies. Whereas another product might have reimbursement and you could go pursue that, but you need to design your device to then fit into the reimbursement that's there unless you want to go develop new policy.
Okay, so that really brings up the story, but I suppose this now brings up the idea of how do you help founders refine their pitch around value? I mean,
Mm.
especially when they're trying to raise capital, land a hospital, or engage a strategic partner. What's the difference between a good story and a fundable story?
Oh, yeah. I think the biggest difference is that a fundable story tells you very clearly how it is going to make money for the investors. So, clinical benefit is table stakes, right? Economic benefit is table stakes. But what a lot of companies get mixed up is that investors are not investing to save patients' lives. They're investing to generate a financial return. And
Yes.
it's kind of a side benefit that they get to do it in an area that does good, right? That saves and improve lives. I see a lot of startups where they'll just have like exit strategy is we'll sell to Medtronic. Why? Why would Medtronic buy this? Can you tell me specifically why? And then what's the reason Boston Scientific would buy it, which is different than why Medtronic would buy it. So the fundable stories are the ones that are able to go that level down and really articulate specifically why they can generate an exit that will create a financial return for the investors.
Okay, so US hospitals are under major financial pressures. In fact, a lot are going broke with nursing shortages, capital freezes, margin collapses. And how has this reshaped the type of value medtech startups need to demonstrate to gain adoption? I mean, are you seeing more startups build ROI cases around staff efficiency, automation, early discharge?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Procedural efficiency, hospital efficiency is a huge value proposition. Importantly, though, companies need to be able to prove it. I see a lot of companies where they've sort of got the message that efficiency and cost takeout matters, but they kind of just go, hey, trust me, it works. Hey, this is faster, therefore it saves money. No, you need to prove to some level that doing your thing will actually save money. At the best, that would mean you actually did a study that showed it saved money in the real world.
Yes.
Barring that, there's a whole bunch of other things a company can do, but it's got to be more than, trust me, it'll save money. If you can do that, you've got a much higher chance of getting adoption.
Okay, so let's talk then about burning versus building when value and cash conflict. What's your advice when providing value, e.g., running a trial, hiring a KOL advisor? It comes at the cost of the runway. And how do you help teams choose the right investments or at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, this connects back to the question on value, back to the question on payer analysis and early engagement. It starts with knowing the market on day one. Too many companies fall in love with their device, with their innovation. They should fall in love with the problem the market has in solving it. And if you do that early on, you don't get hung up on, hey, my widget is blue and it has a handle. You get hung up on this patient and this doc has a problem that I can solve. And then you optimize your technology to solve it. If you do that, it's then a lot easier to figure out this is a good spend, this is a bad spend, right? If I'm focused on my device, hey, doing another animal study sounds like a good idea. If I'm focused on the market, I might say, hey, I've proven safety and I've proven the procedure sufficiently. I don't need to do another animal study, but I do need to generate evidence that it's easy for docs to use. So maybe I should do an animal lab and have the docs come in and give feedback on the device that I can start getting some marketing hooks from, and I can start building some relationships that help me generate sales. Same activity done in a different way because it's aligned now to that strategy to get market adoption.
Oh, I love that. Thank you very much for that. Hank, what is it you're passionate about and you want to discuss in the podcast? What is it you'd like to talk about?
Uh, I think my biggest passion that I've had in this industry, two things. One, I love neuromodulation and neurostimulation. I think it's a fascinating area of technology. And then on the business side, I'm very passionate about market validation,
Okay.
which is the gap I think over and over again I see companies have that they have an idea, or if it's a doc, they have a problem, but they get selfish. They have a problem. They care about it, but they don't bother to go out and understand, do others care about it? And in what way do they care about it? And they get so hung up on their thing that they block out the inputs they need to make something that would really help patients. So I'm a big proponent of empathy and of being in this industry, or encouraging people in this industry to solve others' problems,
Yes.
right? Like your problems, you can figure them out on another day. But if you solve other people's problems, you'll probably have a successful business.
Okay, so let's talk about neuromodulation and
Yeah.
neurostimulation. What excites you there?
The thing that really excites me, so if you go way back in time, and I've seen this poster, so I know it's real. At Medtronic, back in like the 60s, Earl Bakken had a like 6 foot tall drawing of the human body, and on it, he made a mark and wrote a thing on there of every place on the body where he wanted to develop an electrical treatment. And it was literally head to toe. Fast forward to today, and there are treatments head to toe using not just electricity, but all forms of stimulation. And what's really happened, I think, in the last 10 years is that the science has caught up. right? We knew we could do electrical stimulation of parts of the brain and we could stop the essential tremors, but we didn't necessarily know how or why. And over time, we advanced the knowledge, we got more precise and more effective, and we now are to the point where we can stimulate individual nerves and understand how that signal is going to affect the body. We can translate the nerve signals. The science has caught up such that we can now engineer solutions to diseases that in the past had to be treated with complex drugs or did not have a treatment at all.
Oh, fabulous. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Frank, if people want to contact you, how do they do it?
Easiest way, if you go to aviomedtech.com, AVIO medtech.com, you can find all the info about us, or you can always find me on LinkedIn at Frank Jaskulke. Always glad to connect with anyone, help make other connections, or provide insights.
Absolutely wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to talking to you in a few months' time about about your life. But you've always been a very interesting and engaging young person. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.